right, so we are in day 3, I believe, of this project. First 2, we're setting up just environment, package management, etc. We also brought in our St. Louis Fred data, in which we've collected here. We did combine the data, so now we're going to do a little bit further cleanup, and then we'll bring in the S&P 500. We'll account for the missing values, and then we'll have one combined file at the end that we can move on to more pre-processing. Then we'll get into the time series modeling going forward. So the first thing I want to do is, I know within this data, the date field that we looked at last time was in all caps, and we need to make sure it's uniform in the same date field that's in the S&P 500. So that's where we're going to start today. So we're going to go ahead and say df, and we'll call out the date field itself as it's in all caps right now, and we'll just say equals PD Alright, so we're good here. So now we'll do df rename, and we're going to try to make it in the same format that is the S&P 500. So as we do the rename, we're going to call columns equals, and then we're going to define, right now we know we're in all caps for date, so we'll say date, and then we'll want it what we actually want to see it as, so we'll say date in this format, and then we'll also go ahead and say in place true. Wow, and that's what I get for typing this late at night. Well, late for me. So now we'll go ahead and save this to a CSV just to take a look at it at some point to make sure everything's coming in correctly. So let's go ahead and we'll just name this fred.csv, and we'll also say our index equals false. So I'm not going to run this just yet. We're going to go ahead and download the S&P 500 data. Now you have the option to either do the SPY, which is the index, but it only dates back to 1993 as that was the date of inception, or we can do df1 equals yf.download, and then we'll say this little caret and GSPC for the S&P 500, and this dates back quite a bit longer, I think to 1929. But for our example, what we're going to do is stick with the same date format that we used up here. So May 5th or May 1st of 1989 to 10/5 of 2023. So, alright, we're in our start. Let's go ahead and say 1989, May 1st. And then we'll say our end date equals, I believe we said 10/5/2023. So 2023. And yeah, I'm just formatting, making sure these are the same. 10/5. Okay, so that's going to be good there. Let's go ahead and move on to, we'll keep naming consistently, df1. And now we need to drop the other columns. So the only thing we actually want to keep in this is the adjusted close column. So let's do df1.drop, and let's call out the actual columns that we want to drop. Now you can do this a number of ways. You can just use an indexing, or you can just do this method and call them out specifically. I'm going to do this to call them out specifically. So I'm going to do open. I also want to do high. I also want to do low. We should have, I think, oh, we just have a regular close. And we should have volume, and I believe that's it. And then we'll also axis equals 1. Okay, so we're good here. Now our next step we need to do, okay, let's reset our index, and then let's make sure also we have the same formatting for the date. So we'll go ahead and say df1 dot reset index, and let's go in place. Sorry, I lost my keyboard there. So let's go. Okay, so date in this one, I think our spelling should be here. So let's do. And this is also just the same way. Let's do df1. And now let's also make that into a CSV. And so 2, and we'll call this one the S&P 500. So we're good at this point. We should be able to just run these two. Let's go ahead and check these. So we'll let them run, and then we really have to account for what we're going to do with the missing values that are in the Fred data. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Fred data. Now I could open it here, or we could open it in a plot, but I'm just going to pull in the CSV so we can see it. So what we have here is, as you can see, on the first of every month, that's our hope. We want to use a monthly on this. We have the data here, but if we just look at account, so we have 415 values down, Fed's fund rate, 415, 415. Okay, it's pretty consistent across the board. Looks like 415 all the way across. Now, what I'm worried about is we actually can just filter this. And if we take out the blanks, is there any chance? Yeah, here we go. On July 1st, we're missing the data here for the inverted yield curve. So the 10-year to 3-month and the 10-year to 2-year, we have these blank values. So we're going to have to fill in and account for these blanks. Now, this is because of weekends and holidays. The S&P is going to have the same problem. So we're going to use a method here, and the method to fill in these is going to be the interpolate method. So, and it's going to be interpolate, and we'll use linear. So let's go ahead and script that. So we're not going to save this. So that's going to be our next task here. So first we're going to combine these. Let's do combined, I guess we'll just call it combined DF. That sounds good enough for me today. PD, and we'll merge these. And the way we're going to merge them is we're going to call DF and DF1. And then we need to merge them on equals, and this is going to be on the date, because that we want everything to align on the date column. And then we need to say how equals outer. Okay, so that looks good. Now this is the one where we have to do use the interpolate linear method. So we're going to define the columns, and I know for the S&P, in fact I can pull it up. Well, I'll just do it in the combined and then we'll look at it. D equals, and this is the defined columns, and that's why I'm just going to use D because it's for a simple variable. I need to define the columns, so I have the 10, 2, and this is going to be year, treasury, spread, and the code we need to include in there as well, as it's going to be captured within the title. And this will be 2-year. And I'll go ahead and pause and write the other ones out for you. So I went ahead and just had to go look up the other ones to make sure I had this correct in the Excel file. So these are the ones we're going to define, spelled correctly from the column names. And that's, yeah, for our adjusted close, and those are the 3. So what we're going to do next is a for loop to use the linear method. So we're going to say for column in D, and this is under the combined DF. We're going to say column dot, and we should have it right there, interpolate, and then we'll say our method, and this should be equal to, and we'll just say linear. Now I recommend looking at the documentation, just because this is just one method. You can use mean, median, you could do forward fill, backfill. This is the one that I prefer, but you know, its mileage may vary. Okay, so there's our for loop, and let's go ahead and now combine and drop our null values at this point. So we'll still go ahead and put this as a CSV. That way we can take a look at our combined values. And let's just name this combined or something. CSV. And like before, we just want to keep our index false. So after running everything, let's go ahead and take a look at what we ended up with. So we have our St. Louis Fred, we have our S&P 500, and now we have our combined. So just for easy visual, I'll pull this over into CSV once again. All right, this looks better. If we take a look, we should see 415 all the way across the board. And what you'll see is now we have filled in values. So there's no more gaps or holes within the S&P 500. the 10-year to 3-month, and the 2-year to 10-year. So this now is a good starting point for the beginning of our modeling. So we'll go ahead and save this here, and then we'll move forward and start. And the first model I think we're going to take a look at, we're going to look at some time series modeling. So we're going to set up all the pre-processing for the time series modeling going forward. So we'll save our current, and I think in the next video I'm going to set up the GitHub account for this, and then we can walk through all the steps with GitHub, and then how to link the project to it for our version control. And that way we can, it can be opened up for the community more.